In this video, we are going to learn how to do the hand sewing stitch, the back stitch. This is a really strong, sturdy hand stitch that actually, if you were constructing an entire garment with a hand stitch, this is the one you would be using on all of your seams because it's most closely resembles a machine stitch and has that same strength and durability. For this sample, you will need a threaded needle with a single threaded thread, a marking tool, a ruler, pins, scissors, and of course, also your fabric. So for this sample, we're going to just take our fabric like we did with the running stitch. We're going to fold it in half. We will need our stitching line. So we're going to use our ruler and marking tool. I'm just using a pencil to draw a straight line across our sample. Remember, in theatrical sewing, we often have a seam line that we are actually stitching on top of. So there is our seam line. I'm going to take a couple of pins just to hold all of my fabric together to make sure it doesn't slide around on me while I'm stitching. This also copies what you would be doing on an actual garment where you would have it pinned together in such a way that you can sew through all the layers. Okay, so for a back stitch, it's very similar to the running stitch. We're going to do the same motion, but in a slightly different way. So we're going to start on one end. I'm going to go down, come back up, and pull my thread. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, do you see where my knot is? I'm going to go back down in my fabric, right where that knot is, but I'm going to come back out past my thread. So I'm going to bring this in real close to the camera so you can see. So my knot is here. I went back down in the fabric after taking my first stitch and brought my needle out past where my thread is coming out. When you have your needle in like this, you want the thread from your last stitch to be right in the middle of these 2 points where your needle is going into the fabric. So I'm going to pull that through. And now I'm going to do the same thing again. Oop, got my thread wrapped around my scissors. So this is where this stitch ends. I'm going to go right back down where that stitch is and come back out past this all the way through. Pull down and back up, always staying on my line. I'm going to take about 2 or 3 more stitches, and then I'm going to show you what this looks like on the opposite side. So on this side, it's starting to look kind of like a machine stitch where those stitches start and stop right on top of each other. If you've ever looked closely at the stitches on garments, you'll notice that machine stitches have that quality to them. There's no space between the stitches. So on one side of your fabric, usually the side that you're sewing from, your stitches are going to look like a sewing machine, where those stitches lie right on top of each other. But on the other side, this is what I would consider the wrong side. This is what it looks like. Those threads are overlapping each other because that's actually what we're doing. We're actually going backwards to take a stitch. That's why this is called the back stitch. I'm going to pull through. So if I was doing a running stitch, I would stick my needle down there and keep going. But I'm not doing a running stitch. I'm doing a back stitch. I'm going to go backwards down my row and go back in to my fabric where the last stitch ended. I'm going to go all the way down. Because you have your threads overlapping each other on the opposite side, that's one of the reasons that makes this such a strong, sturdy stitch. There are no gaps between any of your stitches because on the opposite side, your thread's overlapping itself. And on this side, you are going down into your fabric right where the last stitch was. So this makes a very sturdy hand stitch. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you were to actually hand sew a garment together and stitch the seams together, this is what you would use if you want that garment to actually hold up and be uh, wearable. So these pins are a little in my way, so I'm going to pull them out as I go. I'm staying on my line the whole time. As I come up, I'm making sure the point of my needle comes back up on that line. One thing to note while you're doing the back stitch is when you pull your thread, don't pull too hard, because see how my fabric just kind of wrinkles up there when I do that? You want to pull just enough that that stitch is at the end, and if you were to pull more, it would wrinkle, but don't pull more. So we're just going to keep going like this all the way until we get to the end. My tail got kind of caught in there. If for some reason you do pull your thread too tight and it starts to kind of wrinkle up like this, just pull across your fabric like that, like I just did. That should smooth out your stitches. So we're doing that same scoop motion all the way down, starting where that last stitch ends and going out past where our thread is leaving a tail. If you want to be super particular, you could actually go straight into the same hole, but don't be that perfect. That would take forever. All right, I am at the end here. So I want to tie my knot on this side, but I'm going to take one last stitch. So see how there's a gap right here? If I were to tie my knot here, there's a gap here. So I'm going to go down where this last stitch was and come back up where that thread's coming out instead of past it. So I finish off my back stitch and it looks nice and neat. I'm going to tie my knot. Once I've tied my knots, it's all done. So we're going to take a look at what it looks like from the right side and from the wrong side. We're going to take a close look at this because it does look different. And that's really important to know on the back stitch because you may want one side on the right side of your fabric and one side on the wrong side of the fabric. So see how that kind of looks like a machine stitching where those stitches are right on top of each other? Now if I were to flip this over, they kind of overlap each other. So I would make sure that this is the wrong side of the fabric. And this is the right side. This is what we'd want people to see if they were looking closely at our stitches. So that is the back stitch.